In a tiny run-down apartment, a small child laments her poor living situation. Jahy is a demoness second in command of the Dark Realm. One day a magical girl attacks the Dark Realm and shatters a giant mana crystal that governs magical powers. The Dark Realm falls apart and Jahy loses her powers and turns into a child. Jahy vows to gather the shattered parts of the mana crystal and regain her power, but finds herself subjected to poor treatment in the human world. Left with a small crystal that leaves her with a little magic, she is forced to work part-time at the craft pub Mao to make ends meet. She cries how the world is cruel and that she has to serve humans when she used to command armies in the Dark Realm. During her shift, Jahy runs out of magic and turns back into a child. She becomes worried that the boss will be angry and fire her. The boss discovers Jahy and Jahy declares her status as second in command of the Dark Realm, expecting the boss to be frightened. But to Jahy's confusion, the boss is not scared and comforts her instead. Using her magic, Jahy attacks the boss to try to take command of the pub, but the boss hugs her and Jahy begins to cry instead. The boss gives Jahy her pay and a raise, and Jahy goes home to eat meat again for the first time. Later, landlady, who is boss's sister, confronts her about paying rent, and Jahy complains about paying rent to a human. Jahy feels her dump of an apartment is not worth the rent, but when landlady threatens to kick her out, Jahy finds the apartment better than a cardboard box next to the river. Jahy attempts to negotiate but is almost thrown out again. Jahy tricks her and is chased by landlady, but crashes into the boss. The boss speaks to them and Jahy reluctantly pays her rent. Jahy then finds her necklace with enough power to destroy the human realm is missing and finds that boss had it. Boss gives Jahy back the necklace, and Jahy cries happily, promising to take better care of her necklace. Jahy is sick of her poor life in the human realm after her great life in the Dark Realm. She makes a plan to search for the mana fragments. While searching for fragments, Jahy runs into her former servant Drudge. Drudge has also been gathering mana shards and has recovered a few. Jahy quickly becomes embarrassed of her appearance and her failure to gather shards. The two go to a restaurant and Jahy is shocked at the prices and orders water as she cannot afford anything on the menu. They leave in Drudge's limo and Jahy tells Drudge to drop her off on the side of the road, as Jahy is embarrassed to show Drudge her run-down apartment. The next day, Jahy uses her necklace to search for crystals and stumbles upon Drudge's penthouse apartment. She is quickly jealous of the apartment's comforts and electronics, such as Drudge's cleaning robot. Jahy also finds Drudge has already found several mana crystals, and she claims them for herself, but is caught by Drudge's security system. Drudge cries and is thankful for Jahy revealing the flaws of her security system. Back home, Jahy cries about her living condition. Jahy makes a trip into the forest to find her first mana crystal, but a crow takes her necklace and she loses her map. She starts to look for the crow, but then it starts to rain, and Jahy sprains her ankle. Hurt on the ground, she is comforted by a chick who has fallen out of its nest, and climbs a tree to save the chick. Inside the nest, she finds both her necklace and a huge mana crystal. She is found by landlady, who reveals that Jahy's trip to the forest is next to her apartment. Landlady carries Jahy back home. Jahy replaces the crystal in her necklace with a larger one and it makes Jahy stronger, but boss asks Jahy to leave it at home because it will get in the way of Jahy's work. Jahy persuades boss to let her keep the necklace if Jahy works harder. Jahy works all day and uses the power of the mana crystal to fix problems around the pub. But fixing everything quickly drains the crystal's power, and she turns back into a child. The next day, Jahy meets Drudge to show off the big mana crystal. Drudge asks her where she found the crystal, and Jahy makes up a story of being attacked by a monster bird. Drudge is in awe of Jahy's power, and Jahy brags that she exterminated all the monster birds. Drudge is happy that Jahy has stayed cruel and vicious since arriving in the human realm. Jahy then discovers that Drudge has already recovered a truckload of mana crystals. Later, Drudge finds Jahy at the pub before her shift and Jahy brags about owning the pub. Drudge is shocked when boss calls Jahy by her nickname and gives Jahy an order. Drudge finds the food and drink delicious, but Jahy finds out that Drudge ate several days' worth of food that Jahy must pay. Later, Salva the Magnificent appears and runs into Jahy on the street. Salva is also from the Dark Realm, and wants to take Jahy's place as second in command and rule the Dark Realm. She has tried many times to eliminate Jahy, but is always defeated. Salva sees Jahy petting a dog and plans to attack her. She attempts to use a magic potion that would make her 30 times stronger, but she drops the potion which she spent several months working on. Since the potion is expensive, she tries to lick the ground to recover the potion, but a dog drinks it instead. Salva is defeated by the now big dog. Salva concocts a new plan to turn into Jahy using a pill, and ruin her life by acting stupid. Salva turns into Jahy and is confronted by landlady, who demands her to pay her rent. After landlady threatens her and Salva, as Jahy is shocked and ends up paying Jahy's rent. Defeated, Salva stumbles into Jahy's workplace and orders food but is forced to work instead. She does a good job and makes the customers and the boss happy, failing her mission while Jahy overslept her shift. Meanwhile, Jahy is upset as she is low on funds and is unable to buy food. She heads to the mall to find easy money, but ends up spending all her remaining funds on food. The next day, boss finds out Jahy is broke and takes pity on her and pays Jahy early. Walking home, Jahy is confronted by the police who have received reports of suspiciously dressed people walking around at night. Jahy immediately runs away. While looking for mana shards, the policeman keeps interfering, and she is detained for suspicious behavior while boss and landlady bail her out. Later, when she is chased again, she is caught by the police since she cannot outrun a bike. Jahy finds out the police are looking for a different suspicious person, who looks like the magical girl who attacked the Dark Realm, reminding Jahy of her defeat. Jahy finds and confronts the magical girl at a nearby park, but the magical girl is instead an old man named Miracle Pippin, who the police quickly detain. The next day, landlady arrives to tell Jahy that she and the boss are sick. Jahy sees her and makes fun of humans for having weak constitution, but Jahy catches the cold from landlady and becomes sick. Jahy becomes very upset over being sick because in the Dark Realm only the weak get sick from colds, and she spirals into a depressed state. She wakes up to see the boss and landlady have come to take care of her, which makes Jahy thankful. Immediately, the real magical girl arrives, but she does not recognize Jahy. Jahy attacks her, but the magical girl is too powerful and quickly bats Jahy away. The magical girl demands the crystal for Jahy's safety, still not recognizing her. The magical girl is caught by landlady, who calls the magical girl a cosplaying thief. Landlady calls the police and the magical girl is taken away. Saved by landlady, Jahy dreams of beating up the magical girl in her sleep as she rests. Frightened from her encounter with the powerful magical girl, Jahy is worried that her enemy is in the human realm nearby. She puts on a brave face but hides from others when they mention magical girls. Hiding in the trash, Jahy accidentally loses her mana crystal, but luckily the boss was nearby to find the crystal for her. Embarrassed, Jahy leaves and detects another mana crystal in the hands of a human girl. Jahy demands the crystal, but the girl turns out to be the magical girl in civilian form. The magical girl demands Jahy's crystal, but falls down an open manhole. She crawls out of the hole, but then she is hit on the head by a potted plant, and Jahy quickly realizes the magical girl is cursed with misfortune. Bleeding from her head wound, the magical girl assures Jahy that she has been trained to endure misfortune. Soon more stuff from a nearby balcony falls on top of the magical girl. Jahy declares victory over the magical girl, but the victory is premature as the magical girl transforms and takes Jahy's crystal. Depressed, Jahy goes to drink at the pub and laments her defeat by the magical girl. She dreams of days when she was powerful in the Dark Realm. Landlady appears and Jahy challenges her to a drinking contest. Jahy drowns herself in her many failures and defeats so far in the human realm, but landlady cheers her up and says she is proud of Jahy. The two become very drunk and happily bond with each other as boss cheers them on. The next day, Jahy and landlady wake up in pub having slept there the night before. Boss shows them footage of the night before and Jahy vows not to have drinking contests anymore. Jahy decides that to defeat the magical girl she needs to be stronger. Boss, who is doing a fitness routine, asks Jahy to be her workout partner and bribes Jahy with food. Jahy accepts but soon finds boss's workout more intense than she thought. Jahy continues to train with boss but finds herself wiped out by the workout. Boss gives Jahy some encouragement and Jahy and the boss begin to find success as they train regularly. Jahy looks forward to defeating the magical girl, and the boss is happy to lose some weight. Later, Jahy invites the boss to a gym, but the boss declines as she has hit her fitness goal already. While trying to sleep for the night, Jahy is constantly awakened by her next door neighbor who is playing loud music at night. Frustrated, Jahy begins to make noise back at her neighbor, but finds the neighbor unresponsive as Jahy spends the rest of the night banging pots. In the morning, Jahy confronts her neighbor, but is told by the landlady that she has no neighbor next door. She spends the day looking for mana crystals and stumbles upon one found by a grade schooler. The grade schooler makes fun of her and Jahy turns into her larger form, which frightens the kid who runs away. Jahy then discovers that the grade schooler did not have a mana crystal. Continuing her search, Jahy is approached by another grade schooler who offers to help Jahy in her mission to collect mana crystals to defeat the magical girl, and the grade schooler introduces herself as Kokoro. The two spend the day as a team to find mana crystals, but do not find any. At the end of the day, Kokoro suggests they go to the police to help, but Jahy declines as she has bad memories of them. Later, Jahy gets hurt and Kokoro helps her with some plaster. The two continue to look for more mana crystals. Kokoro finds a 4-leaf clover and gives it to Jahy to give her good luck and happiness. Embarrassed, Jahy takes the clover, but treasures it, and the next day wears Kokoro's clover to work. Later, Drudge's chauffeur arrives to pick up Jahy to visit Drudge's company. Jahy delights in the food and entertainment of the limo. In the human realm, Drudge has started a successful consulting company and loves charging her customers high rates. Drudge says Jahy is the reason why she is so successful, and credits Jahy as being her mentor, and invites Jahy to speak at a special event for her employees. Jahy dreams of praise and accepts. Jahy introduces herself as a demoness, but Drudge quickly cuts her off and ends up doing most of the speech herself. Throughout Jahy's speech, Drudge continues to speak for Jahy, and the speech gets a standing ovation. Jahy is upset that Drudge stole her moment but calms down when Drudge invites her to a party. Boss helps Jahy prepare for the party, and they go with landlady to a bathhouse to clean Jahy up. Jahy is amazed with the bathhouse as she had not had a proper bath in a long time. Jahy soon becomes upset that she still lives in a terrible apartment, and accused landlady for not telling Jahy about the bathhouse earlier. At the party, Drudge reveals that her party is themed after the Dark Realm and she has recreated Dark Realm food from human ingredients. There are also life-size dolls of Jahy's former underlings, and Jahy begins to act like her time as ruler in the Dark Realm. Jahy reminisces about the Dark Realm, but at midnight is reminded that she is still in the human realm. Jahy thanks Drudge for reminding her about their home and goes back to her apartment, where overcome with emotion she vows to defeat the magical girl and to restore the Dark Realm for real. Jahy, who was once second in command of the demon realm, but was banished to the human realm after being defeated by a magical girl, is tired of her pathetic bathtub and decides to go to the bathhouse. Meanwhile, her rival, Sarva the Magnificent, also decides to go to the bathhouse as Sarva is sick of losing to Jahy. She is shocked to see both Jahy and landlady at the bathhouse, and is scared of landlady who mugged her. She is also scared of Jahy's potential power, but because she bought expensive shampoo she refuses to leave the bathhouse. Unfortunately, Jahy starts to use her expensive shampoo and Sarva is shocked to find that Jahy has already used most of it. She attacks Jahy but trips on a bar of soap and is saved by Boss and soon forms a crush as she can't stop thinking about her. She also loves how the boss is always kind to her, which made the trip to the bathhouse worthwhile. The next day, Jahy is in a great mood because it is payday, which gives her enough money to go to the department store to find a weapon to use against the magical girl. Jahy goes shopping for a weapon but soon gets distracted by numerous product demos of useless kitchen items, and soon starts to fill her shopping cart with junk. She also falls for a scam toy that promises her good luck as well as new kitchen equipment. Eventually, she finds the toy section, and mistakes it for the weapons section, and decides on a toy lightsaber to help her defeat the magical girl. She doesn't realize until she gets home that everything she bought with this month's salary was useless, and eventually she gives them all to Boss. Jahy's second plan is to trap the magical girl in a trap and then defeat her with magic. So she starts to fill her apartment with traps to guarantee victory over the magical girl. However, after any hours the magical girl never arrives, and when a hungry Jahy leaves to go grocery shopping she realizes she has trapped herself in her own apartment. Suddenly the landlady arrives to collect rent but steps in Jahy's trap, so Jahy launches herself at landlady to save her from getting hit on the head. As they clean up the apartment, the landlady promises to keep Jahy safe. Meanwhile, Sarva is having nightmares over Jahy and the dog she encountered. She runs into Jahy, who is fighting with birds for her lunch, but confuses small Jahy as a little girl that looks like Jahy and finds her too cute. Sarva tries to intervene but the crows fly away with the lunch, and to make up for it Sarva offers her lunch. A depressed Sarva asks Jahy for advice on how to be strong, and Sarva explains that there is a terrible opponent she needs to defeat but she is too scared to move against her. Jahy relates to Sarva since she is also scared of the magical girl. She encourages Sarva to try her best. Before they can introduce themselves to each other, Jahy has to run off to work, and Sarva is encouraged to confront Jahy at long last at the pub. But Sarva finds that Jahy is completely overloaded with work, and a scared Sarva decides to confront her another time. The next day the magical girl saves Kokoro from getting run over by a truck. And when Kokoro meets Jahy to help her find magic crystals, she tells Jahy about her experience with the magical girl. Jahy becomes jealous of the magical girl for saving Kokoro. She tries to show off by transforming into her large form, who is impressed with how big Jahy has gotten. Eager to show off her strength, Jahy picks up a big rock for Kokoro to show off her physical strength, and casts a spell to show off her magic. But Jahy quickly becomes exhausted and changes back into her small form. Then on the way home Jahy runs into a cosplaying magical girl. At work Jahy is determined to improve her situation and get a larger magic crystal. When she is able to take a reservation on the phone, she realizes she has grown too comfortable in the human realm. However, she also finds she enjoys working at the pub even if she is supposed to be a demon lord. Boss tries to comfort her, but Jahy rebuffs her and promises that once she gets enough power to restore the demon realm she will definitely quit working at the pub. Later Jahy is spying on the magical girl Kyoyuko and finds that the civilian magical girl is always getting into unfortunate accidents. This is because she took Jahy's magic crystal, which gives humans a lot of bad luck. Jahy plans to steal back the crystal and then beat the magical girl up. She watches as misfortune after misfortune hits the magical girl and starts to feel bad for how terrible the girl's life has become. She tries to attack Kyoyuko while she is resting, but is shocked to find her still awake and is caught red-handed. A nervous Jahy confronts Kyoyuko about the magic crystal, but the magical girl confuses her aggression with gratitude. And it turns out that the magical girl carries a heavy burden of misfortune for keeping the crystals, so that other people can have better lives and be spared from their bad luck. The magical girl leaves to hunt for more crystals, and Jahy escapes the school, feeling conflicted about the magical girl. Boss tells Jahy that she would like to make a garden to have homegrown vegetables for the pub. This gives Jahy an idea to grow her own food to save money. Boss tells her that talking to the plants makes them grow faster, so Jahy makes fun of her plant and drowns it with water. She calls the plant Tomaru and decides to take the plant out on walks, which confuses landlady. She is happy to see the plant sprout, but it soon starts to wither as she notices bugs on the plant. She buys lots of insect repellent and tries desperately to keep the plant alive. And the next day Tomaru is saved and grows larger. Jahy takes good care of the plant, and after some time the tomato plant produces its first fruit. But when she heats the fruit it is way too hot, and she accuses the plant of betraying her, not realizing that she was raising a habanero pepper plant the whole time. One day the landlady arrives and announces she is living with Jahy now because she had a fight with her sister, the boss. Jahy asks the landlady to live in the next door unit, which is empty, but the landlady refuses because it would be too lonely to live alone. Jahy only lets the landlady stay with her when the rent becomes free, but during the night they constantly fight over the single blanket. Landlady also leaves her messes all over the place, and Jahy tries to kick her out, until landlady says she will do all the chores in the house. Later she runs into Drudge, who takes her to a cafe, and Drudge asks about Jahy's progress with restoring the Dark Realm and reports her progress. And Jahy is shocked that Drudge has already collected many crystals, including several large ones. Drudge punishes herself for not doing better, and Jahy feels terrible for not recovering but actually losing her mana crystal. Drudge asks Jahy to punish her, and Jahy starts to order lots of food at the cafe to charge it to Drudge's account, and Drudge enjoys the punishment too much. Jahy reports that she has found the magical girl who destroyed their world, and plans to have Drudge defeat her. But Drudge is confused and thinks that Jahy has already defeated the magical girl, and Jahy takes credit for her defeat. Suddenly the magical girl appears outside their window holding a mana crystal, and Jahy tries to recover from her lies and says that the girl is actually her new servant. Drudge becomes upset because this new servant is human, and she proclaims she will destroy the human in collecting mana crystals, and leaves to become a better servant, which leaves Jahy to pick up the check. Jahy returns home to find that landlady has failed all the chores as landlady has no idea how to do housework. Boss calls and Jahy picks up because landlady refuses to speak to her sister. Jahy calls the landlady spoiled because she has a nice home and a nice sister to go to, and she convinces the landlady to make up with her sister. Landlady thanks Jahy for her help, as the sisters fought because the boss wore one of the landlady's clothes. Thinking about the day's events, Jahy realizes she must hurry to restore the demon realm, as her master the demon lord is waiting and probably is not happy. Jahy, the former second in command in the Dark Realm but who was defeated and sent into the human world, finds a magic crystal in the middle of the road. However, she feels like this is a trap and that the magical girl is waiting to ambush her. In case the manhole is a pitfall trap, Jahy tries to carefully remove the crystal, but she also wonders if the magical girl rigged the crystal to explode. Boss arrives and Jahy almost falls onto the crystal in a panic. Jahy watches as Boss starts to pick up the crystal, and she tries to stop Boss from triggering the trap. But Jahy accidentally dives onto the crystal and picks it up. An exhausted Jahy congratulates herself for defeating the magical girl's trap. The next day she and Kokoro meet at a large park to look for magic crystals, and Jahy is happy that Kokoro is such a good minion. Jahy also finds herself distracted by the play structures in the park. She decides to give Kokoro a flower as a gift, but finds and attacks a group of adults surrounding Kokoro. Jahy becomes horrified because she helped defend a human, but becomes happy when Kokoro appreciates the flower. Suddenly police officers arrive in the park and Jahy takes Kokoro to run from the law. They hide in a play structure but are immediately discovered. Jahy decides to distract them and lead them on a chase, but is quickly captured and Boss has to bail her out. A black and white dog walks down the street barking at other animals, and the dog is actually Sava, who had a plan to turn Jahy into a defenseless dog, but accidentally turns herself into a Shiba when she mistakes her potion for tea. Since she can't do anything about it, she decides to go outside and runs into a dog that had previously attacked her. Suddenly Jahy appears, and Sava finds herself overwhelmed by her new dog senses as she plays with Jahy. Sava soon becomes sad because she actually really enjoys being a dog. When it starts to rain, the landlady arrives thinking that Sava is a stray and helps her, and after some time Sava changes back. That night, Jahy imagines playing with the dog she met. Jahy is looking forward to a beach vacation, but she is actually working at Boss in the landlady's beach shack. With the rise of unfortunate accidents at the beach, Jahy wonders if there is a magic crystal nearby, and she goes to look for it. However, her job keeps her from searching effectively. She watches as more misfortune happens and helps several beachgoers that are having accidents, such as being attacked by jellyfish, attacked by sharks, and getting lost at sea, and she unintentionally becomes a hero at the beach. She almost gives up when it becomes morning, but stumbles upon lots of shards in the water that she collects in buckets. Jahy celebrates, but landlady reminds her she still needs to work. Drudge is becoming bored running a large company even if she is generating record profits, and is unhappy until she sees Jahy at a park and sits with her. Jahy tells her she might be working too hard, and she should relax, and Drudge is shocked because she is used to Jahy abusing her for useless work. Drudge is unhappy that Jahy seems to be more relaxed and less abusive in the human world, and Jahy senses that something is wrong and thinks Drudge has uncovered her lies that she defeated the magical girl. Instead, Drudge starts to break down, accusing Jahy of becoming more human-like and begs her to treat her with more cruelty. Jahy is grossed out, which makes Drudge incredibly happy, and Jahy remembers that Drudge was an idiot in the Dark Realm. Jahy assures Drudge that she is still working on rebuilding the Dark Realm, and that Drudge doesn't have to worry about the human realm softening her attitude. But after Drudge leaves, Jahy goes to play with Kokoro. Soon it is time for Jahy to fight the magical girl Kyoyuko, and with the crystals she has been able to collect, she challenges the magical girl to a duel. Kyoyuko transforms, and Jahy fights with weapons and magic using the magic crystals. While they fight, Jahy wonders why Kyoyuko is so obsessed with destroying the crystals, and her opponent reveals that when she was young she was often bullied. So to prevent others from facing misfortune and unhappiness, she collects and destroys crystals. Jahy calls her an idiot for trying to take on all the misfortune in the world, and she has learned from her time in the human world she needs people to support her. She proposes a deal where Kyoyuko gives her magic crystals, and in exchange Jahy will be her friend to show her how misguided her mission is. Kyoyuko takes the deal and is excited to finally have a friend, making Jahy uncertain about her proposal. Jahy soon finds that Kyoyuko is a very insistent and excited friend, and agrees to visit Kyoyuko's house. Though when Kyoyuko is uncertain about their friendship, Jahy watches as the magical girl breaks down. Kyoyuko then reveals that she was given a mission to destroy the Dark Realm, and she actually had no problems with Jahy's home. And when they arrive at Kyoyuko's house, Jahy discovers it is a complete dump. Kyoyuko also tells her a ghost is living in the house, but Jahy finds out that the ghost is actually the Dark Lord squatting in the house eating cup ramen. Kyoyuko defends her friend, and Jahy introduces her to the Dark Lord, who has also grown smaller since the destruction of the Dark Realm. As they eat refreshments, Jahy determines that the Dark Lord must have appeared after so many magic crystals were collected by Kyoyuko. Jahy declares a celebratory party, but the Dark Lord quickly eats all of the refreshments and drinks, leaving Jahy with nothing. Kyoyuko prepares a takeout feast for her friend, but once again the Dark Lord quickly eats everything to Jahy's despair, leaving her second in command a single piece of octopus. After dinner they talk about Kyoyuko's mission, and the magical girl reveals that one night she saved a drowning cat, but also almost drowned until she was saved by a bright light that gave her powers and asked her to destroy all the magic crystals. Jahy is certain that with the Dark Lord at their side, they can defeat the mastermind behind Kyoyuko's powers, as the Dark Lord was a fearsome opponent in the Dark Realm. But Jahy also has a hard time understanding the Dark Lord because the Dark Lord doesn't really talk. Jahy also becomes horrified that the Dark Lord doesn't seem to want to leave the dump, because she loves getting food from Kyoyuko, and prefers the magical girl over Jahy. Jahy runs away, but the next day wants to meet with Kokoro to tell her the good news about the Dark Lord's revival. However, her playtime with Kokoro is interrupted by Kyoyuko, who wants to spend time with Jahy. Jahy tells Kokoro that Kyoyuko is bad news because of her powers, and they run away, while Kyoyuko thinks they are playing tag. Jahy becomes upset that Kokoro and Kyoyuko seem to be getting closer, and when Kyoyuko falls into a hole they rescue the magical girl. And when Kokoro proclaims they are all friends, Kyoyuko is overjoyed with finally having friends. Tired of Kyoyuko, Jahy decides to go to work, and discovers that Kyoyuko will also be working at the pub for boss. Kyoyuko insists that it is just a coincidence, and though Jahy is upset, she discovers that Kyoyuko is taking a part-time job because the Dark Lord keeps eating so much food. As her senior, Jahy tries to teach Kyoyuko how to work, but Kyoyuko is really clumsy and Jahy has to save all of her messes. But after the boss gives Kyoyuko some encouragement, the new hire becomes much better and Jahy is horrified when the boss decides to have Kyoyuko and Jahy work together in all their shifts. Later they review the boss's new cooking and Jahy uses the test to her advantage by asking for improvements so she can just eat more delicious food and try out ingredients like beef that she could never buy for herself. Jahy finds the beef dish more amazing than even food from the Dark Realm, but the landlady arrives and insists that the food can't be profitable. Suddenly the Dark Lord appears and eats the rest of the food, and Kyoyuko is able to get the Dark Lord to leave by promising to buy her a snack from the store. Jahy cries because the Dark Lord seems to like Kyoyuko more than her. Jahy tells Drudge that the Dark Lord has returned, and although Drudge is overjoyed, she is surprised to see Kyoyuko, who calls Jahy her best friend. Drudge is offended that a mere human like Kyoyuko has gotten close to Jahy, and an angry Drudge threatens to destroy Kyoyuko. Kyoyuko and Drudge start to argue that they are the better friend for Jahy, but Jahy gets sick of their garbage when they start to say untrue things about her. The two finally decide that whoever collects the most magic crystals for Jahy will be considered the best underling. They each transform into their alter egos and leave Jahy behind. At first Jahy is happy they will collect crystals for her, but gets stuck with the food bill. So while Drudge and Kayuko are out collecting magic crystals around town, Jahy is stuck washing dishes to pay for their enormous meal. Annoyed that her plans to defeat Jahy have always been foiled, Sava sets a trap for Jahy on her normal walk home after analyzing her habits. Though when Sava sees Kayuko following Jahy, she becomes worried that the human girl will get caught in the trap. And just as she fears, an overly curious Kayuko gets caught in Sava's chomper trap. Jahy ignores Kayuko, and Sava tries to save the trapped girl only to discover the human is easily able to beat the trap. The next day Sava improves her trap, but only catches Kayuko again the next day, who seems to be faking being trapped in Sava's chomper. Finally Sava develops her most powerful version of her trap, but Jahy and Kayuko easily move around the trap this time around. To see if there is something wrong with her trap, Sava traps herself painfully and ends up defeating herself. The Dark Lord has been eating everything in Kayuko's apartment, and the magical girl is shocked when a hungry Dark Lord hides herself in her book bag and accidentally gets taken to school. Kayuko has spent a lot of money to take care of the Dark Lord, and later finds out that the Dark Lord was actually trying to give Kayuko her lunch which she left at home. And later at lunch Kayuko thinks of the Dark Lord and Jahy fondly, until she discovers that the Dark Lord had already eaten her lunch. Later Jahy and Kayuko meet to go to work together, and Kayuko asks Jahy about the Dark Lord. Jahy explains that the Dark Lord had a large appetite, and the demons feared and revered her, so they offered sacrifices of food to the Dark Lord, and eventually Jahy gathered a large kingdom of demons to serve her. And Kayuko realizes that the Dark Lord is really just a lazy girl who eats a lot of food. Though when they walk to work, a mysterious being tries to attack Kayuko, and is only stopped by the Dark Lord, who watches them from afar. Drudge wonders if Jahy would like to wear other clothes, and she gets inspired to make her own successful fashion brand. The highly successful Drudge decides to eat at a pub for dinner, and runs into Jahy and Kayuko working together at the pub Mau. Drudge is furious that Kayuko gets to be co-workers with Jahy, but she doesn't want to cause trouble, so she keeps quiet. She watches as the clumsy Kayuko keeps messing up, and looks fondly as Jahy berates the human girl. However, Drudge is afraid that her place as the abused underling is being replaced by Kayuko, and misunderstanding the situation she tries to encourage Jahy to keep restoring the demon realm. Jahy, who has been working hard trying to restore the Dark Realm, has been unable to sleep very well, and feels that her futon may need to be replaced for something better. She decides to reward herself and goes mattress shopping, finding beds so comfortable she falls asleep in the store. She buys their most luxurious futon, but landlady arrives and doesn't believe that it is highly quality, so she tries to test it. The landlady finds the bed so comfortable she falls asleep, and an angry Jahy tries to remove her but falls asleep as well. Boss later arrives to tell Jahy that she needs to move out for a few days while the building is repaired, and that Jahy can stay with her and landlady temporarily. Though while she is with them, they just want to have Jahy wear different kid outfits, and Jahy wonders if spending time in the human world is making her more childlike. She later goes to sleep with them, but gets beat up at night because Boss keeps kicking her while staying asleep. Then after a traumatizing night getting beat up, Jahy doesn't get any sleep. Sova finds herself surrounded by a white light one day, and suddenly finds herself more powerful as she swears to finally destroy Jahy. Sova finally confronts Jahy head on, but realizes that Jahy has no idea who she is, except that she cheered Sova up one time, and Sova realizes that kid Jahy was actually adult Jahy. Sova tries her hardest to make Jahy remember who she is, but Jahy still has no idea who she is. Promising to defeat her and become the second in command to the Dark Lord, Sova summons a magical sword using the power of light, and Jahy realizes that Sava is using the same magic as the magical girl. Sava stabs Jahy through the chest, but as she keeps attacking her they realize that the sword is actually only causes healing. Sava starts sobbing because her new power is pathetic, and since Jahy feels sorry for her she pretends that since coming to the human realm Jahy has become even stronger. The frightened Sava retreats and the white light fades away, but at least Jahy knows her name now. One day Jahy asks Kokoro to play with her, but the other girl ignores her. An upset goes to landlady for help, and landlady asks if Jahy may have upset Kokoro in some way. Jahy later meets Kokoro, and tries to apologize to her friend, but it turns out Kokoro was avoiding her because she had a bad tooth and could not talk, and Jahy is thankful that Kokoro didn't hate her. She plays with Kokoro, but when she goes to work later, landlady and boss tell her that a ghostly voice seems to be bothering the patrons of the pub, and Jahy wonders if it's related to the white light that she saw with Sava. A frightened Jahy can't sleep that night because of rumors of the ghost, and when she hears strange noises in her apartment she runs away. She is then chased by the white light, which asks Jahy if she wants power, but Jahy refuses, and the light attacks and Jahy is saved by Drudge, and the two prepare to fight against the white light. Drudge remembers in the past she was avoided by the other demons because her power was that she could control the hearts of others, but Jahy gave her a chance and she became indebted to the cat demon. Drudge and Jahy prepare to fight the White Light after learning many lessons in the human world, but it ends up retreating. The next day Jahy is working and she cooks food for the pub for the first time, and when she gets complimented for her food she thinks about opening her own restaurant and becoming rich. Jahy tries to cook for Landlady to test out her recipes, but after Landlady leaves Jahy realizes that she would miss Boss if she quit the restaurant, and she decides her food isn't as good as she thought. Jahy later finds Boss who wants to support her in making a restaurant, but the White Light arrives and stabs Boss who becomes a magical girl. Kayuko arrives and they determine the White Light was responsible for making Kayuko also a magical girl. The Light demands Boss take their magic crystals, but Boss refuses because she doesn't like stealing. The Light then turns into a copy of the Dark Lord, and the two powerful beings become huge and fight over the city. Jahy looks to Boss for her new power, but the boss can only make flowers, so Jahy is forced to intervene. And when Jahy sees the pub getting destroyed, she becomes angry and calls her allies to help. Jahy then gets in between the two powerful lords and has to be rescued by Kayuko. The white girl, whose name is Sue, then explains that she is the little sister of the Dark Lord, and she just wants the Dark Lord to pay attention to her because the Dark Lord had become a shut-in, and that's why she destroyed the demon realm. Jahy wakes up and angrily demands an apology for getting hurt so badly over a sibling fight. Jahy then apologizes to Boss for the wrecked pub, but Boss tells her that they can all rebuild the pub together, and she thanks Jahy for stepping in to prevent further damage. Drudge finally arrives too late to help as the battle is over. The group repair the pub and Sue formally apologizes to them by helping to rebuild the destroyed restaurant. One day, Landlady takes Jahy to the pub, and they see Boss and Kayuko celebrating Jahy attempting to make her own store. Jahy has fond memories of working at the pub now, so she is now a little uncertain about starting her own place. But an embarrassed Jahy doesn't admit that she will miss working with the boss and serving the bar's patrons. Boss can tell that Jahy is feeling sad, so she encourages Jahy and lets Jahy order anything she wants from the menu. Drudge arrives after doing location scouting for Jahy's new restaurant, and after intense research has found a place in a skyscraper with the best chefs. But Jahy quickly realizes that to make her own restaurant would be too expensive, so she assigns the responsibility of running the restaurant to Drudge, which would allow Jahy to continue to work for Boss at the pub. And Boss is overjoyed Jahy will continue to stay with them. Meanwhile, Drudge is able to make Jahy's restaurant a huge success. Jahy later goes to the shopping district and meets Kokoro, who tells her that the city is holding a festival. Kokoro tells Jahy about the shrine carrying competition, and Jahy thinks about joining when she overhears that kids can earn prizes for taking part in the shrine carrying. Jahy tells Kokoro she's changed her mind, but when she tries to join they are confronted by two boys who say they will win the competition, and who try to bully Jahy. Kokoro defends Jahy, and out of anger Jahy swears revenge and joins the competition. In her small size, Jahy struggles to carry the shrine while Boss and Landlady watch the competition. And finally, at the end of the competition, the festival staff give Jahy the prize for being the most enthusiastic shrine carrier, and the two boys apologize for their behavior. But Jahy is disappointed when the prize turns out to be a bunch of kids' toys. Meanwhile, while stalking Jahy at the festival, Salva runs into Boss, who remembers Salva and volunteers the girl to join the shrine carrying competition. And Salva fondly remembers how kind Boss was to her, and Salva has a lot of fun carrying the shrine enthusiastically. Landlady arrives and Salva becomes scared because she remembered how harsh Landlady was, but before she can run away the sisters volunteer her to help drum for the festival. And Salva finds out that Landlady is only harsh to Jahy. Landlady helps her learn to drum for the festival, and Salva finds herself enjoying it very much as the festival gives her food for helping them. Salva then participates in the festival parade, and has so much fun, she's starting to completely forget about Jahy, until she runs into Jahy after Jahy had won prizes from her competition. And while Jahy struggles to remember Salva's name, Salva is embarrassed that Jahy has seen her in a ridiculous outfit. At the end of the festival, Kokoro leads Jahy outside to enjoy the view, and the two are joined by the rest of Jahy's friends at the end of the festival as they all watch fireworks together, and Jahy has forgotten about restoring the demon realm. And this is all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.